Was he getting the Fed to neutral, or was he actually getting it to a rate cut? Because the market's clearly interpreted as we're going to get the rate cuts. On the other hand, he talked about a lot of uncertainties. He wasn't sure where some things would go, particularly with respect to trade, as you referred to. So are we now at neutral, or are we really decidedly pointing in the direction of cuts?
Oh, that's such a great question. So I think we had been in neutral prior to some of these statements. So as you'll recall, the Fed was on a trajectory of repeated rate hikes. It then paused those rate hikes. That was the posture of neutral. We are now in the mode of taking the gear, moving it out of neutral and towards a different gear, towards a gear of accommodation. Now, the accommodation has not happened yet, but the signaling is increasingly important because, of course, markets are sophisticated and they react to even the mere signaling of what is to come. And what we're seeing, not just in the FOMC statement, but also consistent in his press conference, but also in the dot plots that came out yesterday, you're starting to see a movement towards the preparation for a rate cut.
So, Sarah, when it comes, what will it be? And the reason I ask is this. He was asked specifically about 25 basis points versus 50 basis points as the first cut. And he said, well, I don't want to get into specifics, but he said an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think a lot of people said that's sort of saying if we're going to do it, we're going to do it big.
Well, it may or may not. You'll remember also that the Fed doesn't have a lot of room, actually, to do a huge cut, right? So the current levels are somewhere between 2.25 and 2.5%. That is lower than the Fed funds rate would be at if the Fed wanted to achieve maximal accommodation. So in other words, the runway is shorter. And the question is the extent to which the Fed is going to want to so-called waste all its ammo on a big rate cut as a so-called insurance policy now, or whether they're going to want to hold back some of it should things deteriorate or should they need more room to accommodate.